should get this one.
Right.
Am I all right?
Yeah, you're good, yeah.
I've sort of provided some support to Stuart and his team in terms of the self-assessment, because I've got an ESTIN background as well. I've done some work with those. And what you have to do in terms of writing a self-assessment is be as honest as you can. Pick up the good things and any shortcomings. And what wasn't in the self-assessment was some of the good and shortcomings that they actually know about, but they hadn't articulated it. They tend to describe things more, and you'll find that in nearly every inspection that's done. ESTIN will make a recommendation about your self-evaluation processes being more robust and honest, and Keith is nodding, you'll have had that in the college as well. So there is some work that we've done around the style of writing, and about actually looking at some of the things that they've written and saying, this is too descriptive, what is the actual outcome of this? You know, so some of that work is ongoing.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chair. I just wondered whether all the safeguarding concerns had been actioned, and were there policies in place with the employers that you were satisfied that are being carried out? Obviously, it's a major concern if you think that the safeguarding of young people is not in place.
I think in the first instance, at the time I was satisfied that all the safeguarding procedures and policies were in place. Our safeguarding policies and procedures are robust. They are the Council's policies. They are revised every year, so by our own safeguarding officer. I think in addition we do our health and safety checks with employers as well, and I think I said in our seminar, around 61% of our learner survey returned, and 96% said they felt safe in their working environment. So, for me, our process was in place, and it was a sea change with ESTIN with regards to safeguarding. I'm absolutely confident that our learners are safe in the workplace. I'm absolutely confident that we are following all processes around that as well. I think just to add, just to give you a sort of figure, the percentage of people who would fall under that learner category for Torfaen training at that time was 7% of our learners. 27 learners who do apprenticeships would be deemed as vulnerable young adults out of 1,200 at that time. So it was a very small percentage, but obviously that's still a very important percentage. Yeah, absolutely.
If I can just point out as well, if ESTIN had any serious concerns about safeguarding, they would have actually stopped the inspection, and so clearly there was nothing that serious that required that to happen.
No, the focus was on the recording and the nature of the fact that many of our learners are out with subcontractors, and whilst we had policies in place and we had records in place, the monthly contact with the individual subcontractors didn't record specifically that the safeguarding had been a discussion at every one of those meetings. So it was just making sure we upped the evidence base of the processes.
So in addition, we've revised our review forms. So the individuals, the ILP, the learning plan, has a section that covers safeguarding. So it doesn't have to be covered at every single contact with the learner, but throughout a 6-month journey you would expect to see, so if there's been 6 visits, you would expect to see 3 or 4 times occasions where it's been recorded that safeguarding has been discussed, or prevent, or other areas as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to look at 4.7 and the summary of the findings from ESTIN. So in that summary it says that over the past few years too many learners make slow progress towards completing their apprenticeships, and also the quality of teaching, training and assessment is too variable. Officers and assessors do not always challenge learners enough to make the progress they're capable of or set clear enough targets. How is that actually being addressed?
Well, the bulk of the reason for that was because of the 600 learners that we had to move from subcontractors. So once those learners are not achieving in a timely manner, they are always going to be late. Yes, so there are various strategies that you can employ. Our strategy was to ensure that we did the right thing by the learner for them to achieve however long we carried on with them in learning. So they were always going to be what are known as overstayers, and it was always going to have a negative impact on that. What we have done in addition to that is we've put in processes that mean we are much more focused on knowing, for example, when a learner starts, there's an expected end date, but what we're doing is having a pipeline of, well, if they've started now, at what point should they be 20% through their qualification, 40%? That wasn't being monitored as visibly and as openly as that. We have invested in OneFile, which is an electronic portfolio, which makes the doing of that much simpler. The processes were in place before, but obviously not so highly visible and not so easy. The quality of teaching and learning, a lot of that relies on the essential skills. So as part of the full framework, the vocation element, whatever the route is, whether, construction, business admin, whatever it is, every learner does essential skills, and they do essential skills at the level of their qualification. So if every learner has to be assessed. If the learner isn't at the appropriate level, then we are required to put in teaching and learning. That involves a few things, taking the learner out of the workplace, which sometimes for an employer, they're out of there, but we actually have to undertake the teaching and learning around that. So there are some things that we've done to improve that. We've got an essential skills team who specialise in that and also support the training officers that are actually delivering that work during the visits in the workplace, making the assessments as appropriate as possible to the individual workplace, and also the last thing is challenging those learners to achieve as quickly as possible. So it's a fine balance, because most of these learners are adults, and a few of them are young adults. Everybody has got different pressures on their time. So when you're in the workplace, whether or not you're going to finish this particular unit by the end of this month or after Easter, or those sorts of challenges are in place to ensure that if a learner could complete earlier, we try and ensure they do. So a lot of process.
I think just to add to that, so we talked a lot about having the evidence to prove that you've done the work. So as an example, for learners not progressing quickly enough, or even, I'm just going to go back to the point a second, 2 seconds, there not being enough challenge, Estin would ask me a question, of 100 learners, how far, what percentage are within 3 months of achieving? And we worked from a manual system, so you had to go back and check all the files. If they was to sit down, and they did, when they sat down with learners and they say to a learner, how far are you along in your qualification, that learner at that point couldn't tell them, I'm 60% of the way along, or I've completed 6 of my 10 units, etc. With our OneFile e-portfolio system, that's now there. So any learner at any point can click on their system and they can see how far they are within their learner journey. Any employer can do that. And obviously from a management and leadership point of view, my teams can access it, I can access it all as well. So it wasn't that we couldn't tell them how quickly people were moving along, because we could, it would just take us longer. It's now a touch of a button, which is obviously a huge improvement.
Thank you, Chair. I note from the report that 40% of staff are either new or in change roles. Could you give us an idea of how many are new and how many are changed? And how you manage to support those staff? Because 40% is a huge number. You've basically got to have somebody monitoring almost every changed or new member of staff.
Well, if I start, and then I'm going to hand over to Stuart, because he's got more of the detail. I think Stuart has shared 2 organisation charts, a pre and post, which is available now for members. It came up at the visit the other day, so that some of the changes can be seen. We'd started a review of Torvine Training's business prior to Estin, and we were aware, because of changed contracts, we were aware of differences that we needed to make in the running of the business. Contract value had reduced from what it had been, and there were different requirements. So we had to make some changes. We also, at the time as well, you will recall, we had the ABS review running within the council as well, which impacted on some of the staff that were previously Torvine training staff and who were now ABS. So we had a whole council review going on of certain functions, and we also had the Torvine training review. So some of the changes in being, for example, more proactive to support businesses, so moving to an account management style, were things that came through from the Torvine training business. So previously, there might have been, a business might be interested in taking a young person on a traineeship. They may be interested also in upskilling some of their existing staff. That would mean they'd have to talk to two people at Torvine training, for example. With the account management process in place, one account manager talks to the employer. They only have to have one conversation, and we wanted to try and make it as seamless as possible. So some of those changes came in that way. Other changes then, for example, the essential skills, that came. The Essential Skills team was started to be in place as a result of the Welsh Government requirements on essential skills, so that we were on the way of driving towards that. And some of the other changes then came directly as a result of a refocusing, if you like, a sharpening of our focus as a result of the inspection process. We've consulted staff all the way through the process. Because of changes in demand in certain sectors, bearing in mind that a member of staff in lots of the roles has to have a vocational qualification and an assessor's qualification at a certain level. It did mean some changes where we engaged the council services to redeploy members of staff, because you can't necessarily take the time to upskill a member of staff if your demand at a higher level is now and straight away, but we could call on council processes. So staff have been consulted, and they've had all the support from within the council. They're all council employees in the same way as anyone else when change happens. And for some staff, I think the refocusing and the expectations of what it meant to be in the role, perhaps decided people took opportunities to take work elsewhere. Some people, had normal improvement opportunities where they went elsewhere outside the council or within. So it's been a combination, but yes, over the period of time, those are the numbers. So I'll hand over to Stuart if there's any detail you want to add, Stuart.
I'm sorry, I'm just counting a second.
You know to count.
So physically, new members of staff. We've got 11 new members of staff in a team of 44. In addition, there are 6 further roles where there have been promotions or sideways moves or role changes, which has involved consultation, interviews and revisions to job descriptions as well. So it's quite a large proportion of our 44 staff. With regards to training of the staff, we've invested quite heavily with the National Training Federation for Wales. We've worked with their quality manager, and I think I spoke about this last week, that post-Estyn, we sat down with the NTFW to talk about the new common inspection framework and the new requirements that have been set in effect around stretch and challenge and ensuring that the learners move through their qualifications in an effective time, etc. So we are one of the sort of leaders with regards to training. So all of our staff have been on a minimum of 4 training courses that are external to our own training that we run regularly. So we run 12 training sessions. We run a monthly training session on topical issues, and that could be anything from the change to a review form or a change of process. Plus then we've embedded the NTFW training.
Can I just add to that as well? One of the other things that has happened during this period of time is, as a business, Torvine Training also does a lot around the well-being of its staff. So we've got the bronze or silver award?
Silver
award now for a small business. And there are lots of things that are done with the staff to encourage team building and well-being and healthy eating, taking exercise. So a lot of those sorts of things were done as well during this change time to ensure that staff were feeling involved, and that there was pastoral support on a range of things, not purely and simply the changes that had to be happening within the workforce.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the shortcomings identified in leadership, I'm not talking about management now, they're 2 separate things. Can you give the committee some examples of how you've those issues, shortcomings were identified, and what's been done to sort of tackle them?
Well, I think what the leadership unsatisfactory had a lot to do with the inspection area 4 unsatisfactory, and also, as is put in the report, the fact that the number of learners and the timely attainment wasn't there. So we've done the things that I've described already on that. We also have engaged within the process. Dave Congley, as Assistant Chief Executive, took an active role in the leadership, supporting myself and Stuart, but also challenging. So since the time of the inspection, we've had weekly updates at that level. We've had weekly support and challenge. We've also then had the executive member who took a very active role in that, in terms of the leadership of the council, and has been having updates at least on a monthly basis, and sometimes more regularly depending on particular times. So it's been very corporately owned by the council during the period, and we have invested significantly in that. I think the processes that we've also put in place to restructure and to support the changes in the workforce again have been very corporately owned, with the support of HR colleagues as well.
Thanks very much. My question's about accountability and the monitoring of Torvine training. Obviously, schools have governing bodies, and you've mentioned something about it being monitored by the exec member. Can you give us more detail on the contract management framework? Because I don't quite understand what that is all about. And obviously, it was only recently established when Eston inspected. Mm-hmm. So how is this embedded and how is it working?
I'm going to pass on to Stuart for the contract management framework, because it is a fine piece of work, and it's absolutely his piece of work.
Yeah, so just to explain the contract management framework, it's very much a principle and a collaborative approach. And I'm reading from the framework. So this framework is something that I brought with me and developed in my time at Torvine Training. So I've been a contract manager, I've been an operations manager, and I've seen how that works in other providers. We've taken what's best from all of that. So to give an example, we set out a criteria that our subcontractors and our internal delivery partners can understand our principles and our quality and our processes, and the expectation that we set from day one of contract. So in working as a delivery partner with us, we fully expect that providers actively support delivery. We embed supply chain design, commitment, conduct and review, so our reviews are much more robust than they have been. We ensure there are clear lines of communication, so a learner who is learning in Haverfordwest with a subcontractor knows that Torvine Training is the prime delivery partner. And this is essential, because our original focus was a little bit short-sighted in the fact that Torvine Training's internal delivery we knew everything about, but if a learner was asked the question in Haverfordwest, who delivers your training, it would be the provider in Haverfordwest. So we've really grown our brand so that a learner knows that if they have an issue with their own subcontractor, they can come to us, and there's a hierarchy of challenges there as well. So the principles behind the framework in itself is to create a set of key performance indicators and to create a contract performance pack. When Eston came in February, we had a contract performance pack for Torvine Training and our overall performance. What we didn't have was a performance pack split down to every provider that we work with, and in addition an overall supply chain, an overall Torvine Training, and then an overarching piece again. We now have that in place. So the difference being is we could measure to within an inch of our lives Torvine Training's internal delivery when Eston came in. We've now replicated that right across the patch to ensure that not only 600 learners have that information, we've got it for the 1,200 learners. The principles just allow us areas of questioning. So, as an example, within our key performance indicators, and I'm trying to find the measure, so bear with me. Because my example's just flipped off the screen. Within performance, we measure starts, caseload size, monthly contact, timely achievement, the number of learning units they pull down. A subcontractor may be green against 5 of the 6 KPIs, but maybe read into one area, we would question that area and they would create an action plan from it. So this is just a starting point for us in our one-to-ones where we sit down and highlight areas of risk. And the principle behind it, more so than anything, is to protect the learner and ensure that all those learners get the quality journey and qualification that they deserve. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, just a supplementary on, you've explained how you manage the service, how and who's monitoring you. That's what I want to know.
Me.
So Karen monitors me, and in turn, I think Karen mentioned we sit down with Dave Congreve and Rachel as the new assistant chief executive for our.
You just gave her a promotion.
Yeah.
Is it? All right then. Well, congratulations. So there's a dashboard that I present with Karen every month then on our performance, and that isn't just around the contractual delivery of attainment and other levels, but it's also around the financial.
Our executive member, as I said, takes a keen interest, and also the performance improvement subgroup has been it's been meeting monthly, which includes our external support, and also the council's own improvement team sits on that as well. So that's the scale of who monitors who. So yes, we all get monitored.
I always want to know who inspects the inspectors.
Point there, internal moderation is vital. It's vital that the organisation itself very regularly and very rigorously looks at its own standards and makes sure that it's not heading in the wrong direction. And I'm pretty convinced that they've done that now.
Thanks. Sorry, I just wanted to take a step back, if we could, to the training. On 7.24, it says about that a comprehensive training needs analysis was undertaken, and there are a few things found there, or key areas. I just wondered, is that something that's going to be an ongoing piece of work? You're constantly going to be evaluating what training staff, leadership, management, whoever might need?
Yeah, the simple answer to that is yes. We've got a quality assurance team who go out and do their observations as part of their role with our training officers, and every role within the business. Every training officer who's delivering a qualification or essential skills individual is risk rated. Currently, and I think we've put some figures in with regards to, I think 65% of our observations are graded as good at the moment,
Yeah.
with a view to it moving to 80% plus. The reason why it's at 65 is we've prioritised the new starts. I've mentioned the number of new starts that we've had in our business. Within the observations that are done, there's an action plan created for each of those individuals, and that helps identify what training is required. So that is ongoing. So our quality performance managers, I keep changing the job titles, so excuse me. Our QPMs who manage the training officers have monthly one-to-ones. So within those one-to-ones, they talk through the performance element, but they'll also talk about the support required to do their job. So if they identify there's a risk, they'll create a plan with them, and we'll get them on training as well.
If I can just add to that, there were a few key things in relation to making sure that we could show that we were responding to the ESTIN recommendations, undertaking the training needs analysis, but also responding to what clearly were shortcomings. So there was a process by which there were, and I think Stuart mentioned it before, where we engaged NTFW as well to provide external training. So there have been some, if you like, blanket training opportunities. Then there's also part of the training needs analysis. There have been customised training opportunities, so we're not over-training staff. So if, for example, one member of staff, all their learner reviews are coming in and they're all perfectly filled in, there's no need to do any subsequent training. However, if when we're sampling, picking up Keith's point, when we're sampling those review forms coming in, and in fact at 100% quality assuring them, if there are some gaps, then we need to help those training officers to actually meet those. So it is very much a customised approach, and it is ongoing and will be part of our self-assessment going forward. So the training needs analysis on that customised basis, and obviously any new initiatives that come from Welsh Government will incorporate.
You mentioned there about the majority, 65% of teaching and learning observations graded as good, and the aim to meet 90 is, obviously it's good progress. I just wondered what the time scale is to reach 90%.
Within the PAP, I'd set that target as to be achieved by December 2017. And it's when you create your inspection, your post-inspection action plan, you set yourself targets. You can't hit every target, and I think that's a reality. So it needs what I need to do, and it's timely a timely reminder. So thank you. I need to revise that target now, looking at the number of new people in our business as to when they will move from being adequate to good. So I can come back. So I can set that date. But I would fully expect when Estin come in to re-inspect that they would view the offices as good.
If we continued with random sampling and not prioritised new starters and people needing extra support, then the percentage would be higher. But the important thing is the full coverage, absolutely. And
I think to reiterate the training and the time that we're spending with our staff as well, we have a 2-day walkthrough session next week, which is a continuation of our training. We've made a lot of changes in our business, a lot of process changes, and we just want to fully sort of confirm the learning with the staff so that everyone feels fully confident within their roles.
And that will be helpful for also ensuring again that all of the staff do feel part of one whole team, because it's a very dispersed workforce across, and also with the subcontractors. So with all of the changes, some people that are in one team may not be fully conversant now with what the needs are and the agenda and the requirements of another team. So to do this full walkthrough, which unfortunately was delayed because of the snow, but to do that is really important, because when you've worked for a long time somewhere, you sort of make assumptions or things and you don't realise that perhaps new people coming on board. So it's really important that we proactively do this to ensure that all staff are fully aware of the pressures coming from different parts of the business.
All right. On the inspection that we had yesterday, you had a fully fitted carpentry shop. We went there and we looked at it, and all we were looking at was a building. It would have been nice if we'd have had a trainer there, as a trainees, being organised as to what they were doing. To myself, I went there, I looked at it, and I thought, well, you're not doing us any good. You're not involving us then in drawing training. It was just a building. We had a look at it, and as far as I'm concerned, it was a boof. It was a real dead duck in the water then. And I'm sorry, it was not impressive in any way whatsoever.
What we can do is we can provide some timetables when there are some young people and learners in, because they are scheduled at certain times to come in. So we didn't do anything special. What we did was invite the committee to come down.
But you knew we were coming, so you could have prepared something like that. That's the point I'm trying to make here. So we were there. We were there to inspect drawing training.
I think the opportunity is there if we wish to go back and look at other training sessions. And then John.
Yeah. There's a question on here that says, has the pace of improvement and actions against the peer been sufficient? But I'd like to add a little bit to that. Has it been affected by the fact that you have 25% new, 14% moved or changed roles within the organisation? And do you think that's been to the detriment or the improvement of the organisation as a whole?
I think in lots of ways the new posts that we've put in place and new staff that we've brought in are adding to, because we've reshaped the business to deal with the new environment that we are working with. Have there been some factors that have applied with so much change in the staff team? Yes, there have. So, as you would expect with such, as you alluded before, a lot of change. Sometimes at a point in time when we have people leave the business and we're looking to recruit, that gives us a gap in personnel. And that adversely affects lots of things, because in Torvine Training's world, a vacancy in staff is not a financial saving. It's in lots of roles a loss of income. So yes, the change has had advantages, because I think it's allowed us to, we are reshaping the business to deliver what we need to deliver. We've brought in some very good quality staff. We've also given opportunities for very good quality staff within the business to actually to have progression. But yes, it would be true to say with that amount of change, there have been some cases where we've been affected by either gaps in service because of lack of personnel.
Can I just add as well, just in response to the earlier point, which is a valid point around the construction workshop. The numbers count as well. We've got 24 learners on our construction routeway, of which around 7 are completing carpentry qualification, all in work. It isn't a school, our work is done at the workplace, and they come into our site then for specific tech days. What I wouldn't do, and apologies for this, but I wouldn't create and fabricate a session to show you, because that's not how it works in work-based learning, and I wouldn't be true to my word if I said anything different. What I can do is organise a timetable for him to make it open and not for you to come in and see it when it is working as well. Obviously, just from a timing point of view, this week is my end of month. My end of month is tomorrow. My teams are out there ensuring that all the reviews are done in time and timely to come into the businesses or come back into the business so we can draw down our funding as well. But it's a very valid point. Something that I've been trying to drive for the last 18 months. We've seen a reduction in our construction team from 4 when I arrived to now 1. So you can clearly see us reducing, and there's a need for what we deliver and reduce. And I tried to explain the contractual requirements around Torfaen Train delivering wood occupations in Gwent and Gwent alone, in comparison to where we know there are constructions being built, and bricklaying and plumbing and plastering are probably much more sort of viable at the moment as well. But I just wanted to share that because I think it's a very valid point that you raised and it needed a response.
I'm not convinced I was completely answered, because my question, if you like, came out of the original question: has the pace of improvement and actions against the PIAP been sufficient? And I'm not sure that you really answered that part of the question.
I think whilst Karen's looking through the notes, we've demonstrated that post-Estyn there's been a significant improvement in our attainment. To the level, I don't think it's on these papers, but we can provide you with the slides, that our attainment levels of 88% overall post-Estyn is higher than the top performing provider for the 16-17 data year. Now, in all fairness to those providers, they've hit that 87% over the 12-month contractual period. And I'm talking about a period, so we're measuring apples and pears there. But from a run rate point of view, is the way I like to explain it. From February 2017 to now, we're delivering at 88%, and should we continue to do that, we would be one of the top providers in Wales from an attainment level. So to answer your question, yes, we have made significant improvements.
I just wanted to check. Councillor Karen, it's 3.1c. Is the wording 3.1c that you're querying with me? Because my understanding is that is the scrutiny suggested activity that was given to us. Where the Torfaen Train...
I'll pick up the question off the question you gave.
All right, because sorry, I was wondering if you're referring to 3.1c, whether the Torfaen Train has robust plans in place to continue to progress Estyn's recommendations.
No, not really.
Right.
All I'm sort of saying is, do you think that the improvements that you've made since Estyn... Do you think the improvements you've made in Estyn, in terms of actually the PIAP and how fast you are improving in line with the PIAP, is sufficient?
Thank you, Councillor Karen, for clarifying. Yes, as I think we've put in the conclusion here, we do think we've made appropriate progress with the PIAP, whilst recognising that the actions that we are enacting need to continue to be acted. So it's not a case of we've made the progress and job done. It's we've made the progress and we continue with our foot on the gas, for want of a better phrase, to ensure that we carry on improving, because we're not completely out of the woods.
I would expect a continuous improvement. That's part of what Welsh Government expect. What I was trying to sort of get out of it was about when your next inspection comes through, do you believe that they are going to say that your improvements were sufficient? And obviously you've answered that and said yes.
I was only going to confirm, as a member of the group that's been supporting them, I think we've been satisfied that there has been progress made. Some of the changes that they've made in terms of the staff changes, because I think you alluded to that, into whether it had had an impact, there's been some positive impact, particularly with the essential skills team, in terms of being able to prioritise those learners that need more focus from that team and training the other staff so that they can deal with those who don't need so much of a focus. So there have been positives. I think there are, as the team has said, there will be things that will be picked up when they come for the link visit. They'll certainly want to look at the framework that you've set up to see whether that's had an impact. All of the training that's been done, has that had an impact on learner outcomes to date as well? But as a group that's been supporting them, we are happy with the progress made so far, notwithstanding there's always progress to be made. Does that answer? Okay.
That Torvine training is actually now working at a level better than we are in the college. If they carry on like this, they will be setting the standard. If I was you, I'd be very pleased with their current position, and the challenge for them now is to maintain that.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just further develop actually previous remarks from Councillor Preston on 736? When you state that all training officers are observed when teaching and assessing their learners in the workplace. They're not teachers, are they, the people who work for you?
They will have some teaching. They will have teaching qualifications possibly, or assessor qualifications, and they will be vocationally competent in whichever vocational area they're working in.
So some have teaching qualifications, you'd say?
May have teaching qualifications, yes.
So then how do you consistently assess if some have differential qualifications in terms of their performance? I mean, what I'm trying to get is, what are you assessing when you look at them, and how qualified are you to assess them?
Okay. Well, I don't personally observe because I'm not. But from the purpose of all of the staff are qualified to the level that they need to be qualified to as regards our contract, and we'll have both the assessment and the vocational qualifications. What we will do is, on the back of the training that we have benefited from when Estin provide training on teaching observations, we will deliver and observe teaching in the same way as Estin will do so, and we'll use the Common Inspection Framework to actually assess the performance of that. When we look at performance of a teaching and learning session, as Estin are doing, they are assessing the outcomes of that session. So whether good quality teaching and learning took place, and we will enact that in the same way.
So you say you're using the Estin categorisations to assess performance?
We will use graded observations. I'll leave Stuart to answer the detail of that, but in relation to how we would assess as part of our assessment, we would assess in line with the Common Inspection Framework. So the understanding would be that if a teaching and learning session was judged adequate or judged good, etc., that if an Estin inspector hopefully being there, they would have come to the same judgment. So in the same way as self-assessment and self-evaluation done in schools, colleges and in workplace learning.
I think to add to that, our quality assurance team are qualified IQAs, internal quality auditors, and they are the people that go out, and they are route specific as well, so they would go out, and they have been at the forefront of any training that's been external. They've been out of that training, and they are then implementing that training with our staff as well. The measures that we use with regards to our graded observations are the Estin measures, and we've got a whole robust risk register that's been set, and we can provide the detail of that as well, which is probably quite...
So why would you just use Estin? Because Estin come in once every 7 years. I mean, why not your own system?
Well, we need to...
The outcome, aren't you, really? You just teach them, you're just assessing based on when Estin come back in, aren't you?
No, the observations are done as ongoing every year as part of the annual self-assessment. So the requirements that Estin look at are what are our outcomes and what are we doing, and our need is to do teaching and learning observations. So teaching and learning observations were being done before, but I wouldn't say they were being done to the appropriate and sufficiency that they're being done now.
Right, but are you using Estin system, the Estin system, or your own system?
We use the common inspection framework because there isn't any point in judging a teaching and learning session differently than Estin may judge it.
But it's great
Yes.
what teaching doing. I mean, most schools don't. Most schools have their own, using schools as a comparator. Most schools have their own system for assessing the quality of teaching and learning. Some use Estin, but frankly, that's not particularly developmental if you're just using Estin, because you're just basing it. You're just worrying about when Estin come in and grades the sessions, aren't you? Really, it's not particularly developmental, is it, to look at how you actually move stuff forward?
If you're talking about the sort of developmental assessment as opposed to a judgment assessment, I think then that is in place as part of the training needs analysis and the training that's undertaken. The purpose of the inspections the purpose of the observations that are being undertaken at the moment and collated at the moment are part of our requirement on the post-inspection action plan. But as I was saying, all of these actions need to be embedded in self-assessment, because we would, whether Estin were coming in or coming back in or not, we would, as part of our self-assessment process, be going out to the employers and assessing all of the training officers and assessors to ensure that the quality of what is happening across South, West, East and Mid, wherever we are, and through our subcontractors, to ensure that the learner is getting the quality that they're entitled to.
Right. There's been a lot about the learning and the teaching, and also about the leadership post-inspection. One thing I haven't seen any of this paperwork is the fact that you are a multi-site organisation. You have 4 key sites, and obviously any building stock and the land around it is an expensive commodity, and obviously it's in your interest to make sure it's used effectively. And the question I'm asking here is, are those sites delivering maximum bang for buck in conjunction with your partners, in conjunction with subcontractors? For example, I heard yesterday about British Gas using rooms up in the Life Station up in Trevethin. Is that common practice with the sites to really maximise as much as possible during the working week the use of those sites, not just for learners but your partners? And the second question was, I'll leave on that one at the moment. I'll have to rethink it.
Can I just clarify one point? Torvin Training operates off 2 sites. One at Springvale that you saw yesterday, and the Life Station that you saw yesterday. So there are 2 sites that we have. The Life Station has been utilised as part of the council stock. It requires learning to happen from it. We could look at a review of the buildings that we operate from, and that may be part of something that we are doing going forward. What we try and do is maximise the opportunities for income generation, as well as providing quality facilities for learners who are either very vulnerable young people as trainees who may come in and do a lot of learning based on site before they are work ready. We also have the facilities where we need to bring in learners of any age, or the all-age apprenticeship programme, where they may need to come in for essential skills assessments or for teaching. We may, as Stuart has made reference to with construction, need to bring learners in for particular technical skills if they're not available to be taught or demonstrated out in the workplace. So we've got different uses for the building. But yes, we will open up the buildings if the rooms are available, so that we can generate income, whether that's from bookings from the private sector, voluntary sector, or other partners.
I think to give you some figures, this year we have generated £21,000 worth of commercial income through our training team, who can deliver management training and health and safety, etc., etc. So that's just an added part to the pot. That's probably not relevant to Estin or to this, but it's just to give you an example. I think as well, when Estin came in, and it was mentioned in the report, they deemed that Torvine Training managed the public funds very effectively, and the fact that we are not for profit in effect, and if we generate a surplus, it's spent within the community as well.
Thanks very much. I asked the question yesterday about basic skills and the level of students coming in, or workplace students coming in, and has that level of basic skills dropped? And do you know the areas that if it has, which I'm sure I've had the question answered yesterday, but I wanted it for the committee of tracking where those low basic skills are coming from and the catch-up they have to make in order to go out to an employer. And my second point is, you seem to be running a really tight ship and doing really well. Do you have the opportunity of improving and promoting Torfaen training out in the world, such as utilising the new critical care hospital and the issues that all brings? Those 2 points really. One, basic skills, and then the opportunities.
The first question, which again we spoke about yesterday, we are seeing a higher level of basic skill need being identified through our assessment tool. So the requirement to move someone who's coming in and wants to do a level 2 or level 3 qualification and come in at level 1. I can't provide you with a breakdown. I haven't got that breakdown with me today, unfortunately, but I can provide you with a breakdown of the areas that we work in and where we see those levels. I think it falls in line with areas of deprivation, was something that we all know, and it's quite common. Statistically, we work quite well in areas of deprivation, and I don't think there's a magic formula. We treat every individual against their need, and we are good with those individuals. So it's not, we don't look at the background of the individual. We work with the learner, and create a bespoke package for them. So, in answer to the first question, there is a higher level of need for basic skills, especially from an engagement and a traineeship point of view. The learners that are coming through are coming through with far more barriers, not just basic skills, and potentially something that needs to be tackled before the age of 15, really, as well. The second question around our growth. We are really keen to grow within Torfaen, our nucleus, and obviously outside of that with our subcontractors as well. We have an account management team, and part of their role is new business. Two parts of their role: repeat business, so employees we're already working with, ensuring that we can maintain the relationships and grow apprenticeships there, and then new business as well. So the teams are targeted against that. We have worked with the NHS previously, as have other providers. I think one of the challenges within that, and I know Karen will come in a little while as well, is that there are lots of providers in Wales working with the NHS, and how do you pull that together? But it's something that perhaps we can do as a collective to ensure that we don't say, well, this is what we deliver, and this is what only we look at it and say, what do you need, and where in the network can that be supplied? And if that's in college at the front end, moving into work-based learning later or whatever, then that's something we'd be keen to sort of follow.
And Rose mentioned the critical care centre. Just thinking, are there any sort of liaisons, perhaps looking at the city deal? Would there be anything there that we should be involved in for future training or growth?
It's interesting. There is a paper currently available through City Deal where there is a proposal to look at. The paper's called Skills for the Future. That refers to a potential 10 counties wide proposal to address growth in apprenticeships, amongst other things. So there are various officers within the council that are involved. I'm involved as well on the employability side, but I do have a link into that world. It's about bringing things together and doing the sorts of things that we as a council have talked about, but on a grander scale in terms of making things easier for employers. So we are linked in with that work, which will, again, as with all things, I'm sure bring some opportunities, but may bring some other concerns as well. But we're looking for the opportunities in that. With regards to picking up again some of the points that Councillor Seaborn asked there, I think about promoting Torfaen training. We are very keen to promote Torfaen training. We do promote much better. We've got as well, we took on someone to do with the advertising and to do publicity, and that's proved very effective. The website is much better now than it was before, so we've got a higher profile. We are working on that as well. I was very, very pleased because in the midst of all this, last October, I think it was October or November, we had 2 finalists in the National Training Federation Awards. One was our higher level training officer and one was a higher level learner. And that was really was very good to see, because prior to that, for quite a few years, Torvine Training hadn't submitted anybody into that. It was something I was very keen when I came to this world, but actually generating the interest to get those applications through, because it takes a deal of work, but to celebrate what are very really good stories about how much people put into their learning, and also to celebrate the fact that our staff go the extra mile as well. So the first Stuart in his second year was the first year then we'd done it for many years, and the first year that we put through some, we had 2 finalists, and that was absolutely amazing, and it was a great boost and morale for the staff as well as for all the learners. So we are very keen to promote and market, but what we do have to concentrate on is, one, our core business, and making sure that we deliver on the post-inspection action plan, so that when our link inspector comes in, that everything hopefully is going the right way, and we possibly get some key messages about where we may need to do some further work, and that when Eston come in by the planned time of somewhere between the end of this year, we're in a good place to get a much better inspection outcome.
That moves nicely on. I was just looking at the conclusion and the summary, and from your self-assessment, where you think you'll be at the moment. And I welcome your comments about the pace and the progress of improvement. It's good to hear. It's really positive. And if this is accurate, that's great and positive as well. Obviously, the aim is to be good throughout or excellent. And I just wonder what the timescales are. What are you looking at in the future? The timescales to get there.
Well, the timescale attainment is absolutely key for inspection area 1. Attainment is key. So the next set of data will be publicly verified next April.
Could be sooner.
Could be sooner.
Could be a little bit sooner. But March. April.
So we'll have data, and we'll know data from Welsh Government. Well, Estin will look at it whenever they come in. They'll look at the data that you've got here is the last verified data, the 1670 contract years. So to make decisions on attainment, although Estin will comment on and will take account of current in-year data, which they'll get from Welsh Government, so, and they will test that we know our data as well, but they will always go from verified data. So the chances of us improving hugely will rely on a timing piece of when verified data comes out. But and that's why in our self-assessment, we haven't tried to raise anything above adequate that wasn't already good, because we are concentrating on raising the unsatisfactories to adequate. We don't want to take our eye off that particular ball. We are maintaining the good in inspection area 2, and that is where we're aiming to get to good, obviously our next stage, but the timing on the verified attainment will be a key factor in that. Because inspection area 1 standards will be key for the rest of the inspection areas. But that is our aim, to be good and then move ourselves to excellent. And on an annual self-assessment, that is what we are required to do. And I think we are in a better place to be much smarter and better understanding and analytical in our forensic sort of analysis of everything, to be ensured that we can say in our self-assessment, okay, we may have judged ourselves adequate on this inspection area, but we know there are good features. Because we need, picking up the point that Jan made to us about in our writing style, is also recognising and not being afraid to say, actually, it might not all be good, but this bit is really good, but having the evidence to back it up. So it's hard to put a timeline on where everything might be good. And I wouldn't want to mislead the committee by suggesting that we have a timing issue with when the next set of verified data comes out. Sorry.
Thank you. Have there been any issues or barriers being experienced in delivering any aspects of the PAP?
Your best question from my perspective, not at the moment.
First answer, yes. The design of the PAP was a challenge in itself, in all fairness. And one of the things we haven't talked about, but we should share, is that Estin signed off our PIAP and then contacted us 3 weeks later to ask us to provide another provider with the format of our action plan. So they were clearly happy with the design of our action plan, and obviously that's an aside. Timing on a lot of things with regards to the PIAP. So we've set our timelines to go towards an e-portfolio, and we set our timings that all new starts would be from the 1st of August would be on an e-portfolio. Some of our IT processes have been a little bit restrictive, but we've had to work extra hard, and we've had to put quite a lot of time into the development of OneFile, even to the extent of getting sight of my subcontractors' delivery and bringing them in and training those staff. So one action that might say OneFile implemented on the 1st of August can take months of work. So that's one example, and now opening up the PIAP frantically to find out the other challenges that we faced. Self-evaluation. Again, we've been through performance improvement support groups. There's been numerous versions of a SAR sent to you. I think within my own documents I have 19 versions of this year's self-assessment, 18 of which have Jan's comments on. But it's all about strengthening, and again the time that it's taken around that as well. That's been a challenge. Leadership and management. We have monthly performance reviews that are based around the post-inspection action plan, around Estin. We are currently delivering a contract with Welsh Government as well, so we have those delivered. So it's trying to wear different hats for certain times of the month to understand who you report into. The beauty of it, I suppose, is everybody wants us to be good, so that's our starting point. Some of the actions that we haven't completed, we've taken the decision, we've changed the action in effect, so we've left that action in there as uncompleted, because the EU said we did notices are being refreshed quarterly. We've now given, through our OneFile system, there's a whole learner sort of, I'm trying to think what it would be. It's a bit like Facebook, I guess. So learners can go on there, all the updates come through there. So any recommendations from our learners go into OneFile. We can look at them, and then we can give them an update as to what we've done about their feedback as well.
I can interject whilst you're sitting there. I think one thing is important with the post-inspection action plan, that whilst we had to submit it to Estin for them to consider whether it was fit for purpose, which obviously they did, again, as we are working on these things, other things come into play. So the fact that as part of our performance and the challenge of our performance was that we had a performance improvement support group, and that we knew that we were aiming to come to scrutiny, but the fact that we had the opportunity to do a member seminar, the fact that scrutiny members also came down to visit the venues and to understand, again, those are things that will be added into our post-inspection action plan, because they're important things for Estin. Going back to what I said before about us not putting in the self-assessment everything that we needed for Estin to know that we're done, and it is a work in progress, and it is snapshotted at a point in time, and we will no doubt refresh it further after the visit from our link inspector. And I think some of the challenges can be, timing issues, and some of the challenges are, as Stuart said, sometimes the IT to do all the things that we need to do across a subcontractor base and things out in the network don't always sit neatly with perhaps the normal workings of a local authority. So sometimes we're pushing the boundaries perhaps in order to make sure that we get things done and they work at the pace that we would want them to.
I think lastly, one of the biggest challenges is sort of setting your timelines on it as well, and target dates, and the improving the rate around timely completion. I think, when we set the original target, we were fully expected to be at a certain percentage of, forgive me, I haven't got the number in front of me, by December. The reality is you're talking about a qualification that could be 12 months, 16 months, 18 months, 24 months. We've revised our delivery models now. We have improved our teaching and learning with our learners, but those results don't happen overnight. And an overstay that was an overstay in September, who should have completed their learning, isn't going to overnight complete. If they're 6 months behind, it's going to take 6 months. So there's a bit of a timing issue, and at the time of writing the plan, we didn't have all the reports in place to enable us to really get our forecasting quite tight, but that's improved again.
Can I just come back quickly on that issue? Because, yeah, well, it's just that, it's on that really, because the one thing I was expecting you to say in that reply was something about your subcontractors. Because obviously, my guess is many of them won't even understand what a PAB is. So you know, I was expecting some issues there.
In fairness to our subcontractor network, they will, most of them, and Stuart can give the detail, but most of them, if not all of them, will be either, in some cases, possibly they can be a prime in their own right. So they will very much, because they've got a Welsh Government contract, or they are probably subcontracting from elsewhere. So lots of them will be aware of Estyn as well as Welsh Government contractual requirements. Some of the things, again, that we hadn't perhaps put in our self-assessment in the first place was out in our subcontractor network, we've got examples of very good and possibly excellent practice that we need to make sure that we are sharing and sharing across the whole of our subcontractor network. So the robust monitoring and management of our subcontractors is very important. It was a key recommendation of Estyn's in relation to ensuring we could evidence that we were doing it, you know, in light of what I said about the two previous subcontractors. So all of that evidencing is important, but yes, our subcontractors are on board. Estyn did recognise that actually through our self-assessment process we were already engaging all of our supply chain to contribute in that, which perhaps not all primes that they see were already doing. So we further improved on that, and our subcontractors we've been very open with all the way along the way, because they have to, if they don't make the improvements that Estyn is saying we all need to make, you know, then actually the whole isn't going to come forward. In some cases, some of the subcontractors, when they saw provision, they may have been very happy with some of the things that they weren't so happy with, either with other subcontractors or possibly with 12-month training self-delivery. So our subcontractors are subcontractors, but, you know, we do treat them as equals in a partnership, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Thank you, Chair. You got let me in now, surely. I'm interested in your delivery structure. I take it it's a new structure since your and what I would like to know is, how does this new structure compare to the last delivery structure you had, and do you feel that this one is working effectively now?
Have you all got copies of the structure in front of you? Have you got the previous structure as well?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, okay. So I think there are some key roles in the business that needed changing, and historically we've had one person manage the supply chain, who was managed directly by the centre manager, and you had another person managing our own operations, and I didn't feel that was the best sort of practice. I wanted one person managing at least another tier of management, then managing those individuals. I'm trying to find the old structure, so forgive me a second. So some of the job roles have changed considerably. So the role of a support manager would be to sit with the training officer and counsel them through any sort of concerns they had with their learners and give them the support they needed to ensure they could move their learners through their journey. And it would end up that a support manager would do a lot of work for the training officers. And what we've done within the new structure is put a quality performance manager in place. And that person continues to do the support, but there's a challenge as well. So it isn't just about stretch and challenging the learners. We stretch and challenge our training officers. So if we're expecting a learner to achieve in 12 months, at the 6th month stage, we're sitting down and saying, is this person on track? If they're not, why aren't they on track? And through our contract management framework that we've mentioned before, we can identify those individuals. There will be very good reasons for people not progressing at a rate. Some people, because of the different types of jobs they do, these people are learning and working at the same time, and you are dealing with people. And that's why we've set that expectation that 90% of our learners will achieve in a timely manner, because that allows us a bit of leeway, and that'll still be very high within our sort of competitors as well. Previous structure, we had a quality manager who had, again, multiple sort of operations within her role, and was particularly strong in some areas and hadn't had the opportunity to pick up other areas. So we split that role completely now into a curriculum lead, so someone who can look at our qualifications and ensure that they are being delivered in a quality way. And going back to the assessment of the teaching, that person is someone who's got a teaching background and understands what good looks like, I guess. She's looked at our delivery models and said, our expectations of the length of time were too fast in exams, so we should be giving ourselves more time with the learners. So she's picked up that role, and the deputy manager, Tracy Gwilym, has picked up the overall quality piece and the safeguarding element as well. Is it working? I'd say it is working, but it still needs tweaking and improving. There needs to be a more sort of commercial focus to the. We are delivering a Welsh Government contract, and they give you the contract and they expect you to spend the value of that contract. So to a certain degree, if we don't spend our contract value, then there are learners out there who haven't been afforded an opportunity. So it's down to myself and our operations manager and quality manager to drive that business. So I think I do see that working in the long run. It's been up and running for 6 months now under the new structure. I think the teams have benefited from it because they've got a much more refined approach. They know they can still come to me as the centre manager with an issue, but there are people there with autonomy to manage them within their objectives as well. So I don't know if that fully answered your question because it's gone on to housing.
If I can just, the difference that I see from the change since Stuart has come on board and the changes that we've put in place is there is a much stronger focus on performance and a much better delegated levels of responsibility. So previously, and when Estin came in, some of that structure, the new structure that you see before you, some of that was waiting to be done, some had already been done. And we shared that with Estin when we had some discussions with them. And they did indicate at the time that they thought the new structure was likely they were more favourable towards that. They felt it had greater accountability, greater performance, monitoring and management in it, and that it was more robust to deliver outcomes. There were some further tweaks then that were made in that, and the changes that we've made have been on an incremental basis, because when you're dealing with lots of people and you're also dealing with learners, we also have to remember that when we move things around, we have to make sure that learners that may be attached to a particular training officer that they're used to dealing, we don't just disrupt their learning. So for me, overseeing this, I feel what I've got is much greater confidence that, Stuart can absolutely lead and deliver and the management of this, but underneath him as well, he's got a much better structure to make the best use of the skills of the staff that we always had, and then the new staff coming in, so that it's not like a three-legged stool that if you move one leg, the whole thing falls down. I think it's got much better hierarchy and structure in it.
I think one of the things we've shared with the team as well, when we talked about our delivery structure and we've implemented the delivery structure, if you sort of fold the structure in half, it's on a flat page, just so you can view it. But the operations and quality is side by side, and actually they overlap each other. So you've got centre IQAs, and you've got a data finance person, and training and development, and a curriculum lead, and that underpins the delivery. So it isn't a quality team and a performance team. I think you saw yesterday so Tracy Gwilym and Kerry Moffat sit in the same office. If an individual comes in, could be a training officer, could be anybody within that delivery with an issue, we can sort of triage it there before it goes out as well. So I'm pleased with the way it's working so far, but there's improvements as ever that we need to make.
So just the final one really. Obviously we've looked at everything that's been put in place. We've looked at the support you've had from the Performance Improvement Group, the exec member, all these things. Is it enough? Has it been enough? Do you need any more? What do you need?
I'm not going to go on record and ask for a cash injection from Nigeria, because I'm sure you wouldn't take that.
I'll be watching you on camera.
Yes, my chair will probably flip that. I think, yes, no, absolutely, speaking seriously, the support that we've had within the council, right from our chief executive down who took an active interest in the Estin report, and also in our support along the way on our conversations with Estin, our executive member and the process that he's set up, our performance improvement subgroup, and having external individuals to come in and bring a different perspective to us and to challenge us. We've also helped NTFW by being the pilot work-based learning provider by giving them our feedback, which has enabled them to structure training for all work-based learning providers, and then we've taken part in that. Our Welsh Government account manager has been visiting on a monthly basis, working through the things on a very granular level that we've been doing, and particularly working with Stuart. So yes, I think we have had a great deal of support. I don't think there's anything specific that I'd be requesting, particularly of scrutiny committee. I think there will be things that that you've seen now that you may be having questions, things that you may want to perhaps ask the executive member, or that you may be asking us to either carry on with change in terms of the monitoring and the performance and the information flow to various parts of the council. More than happy to come back and provide scrutiny here with a further opportunity, whether it's after our link visit, because that will be a key milestone, or whether it's later when we've got the date, because we'll have a 3-week notice period of the re-inspection when it comes around. So there are some milestone points when the data next comes out, depending on where things are going to happen, that it would be worth scrutiny having a look at. Absolutely, we can work with officers and work with the chair on that. Or, as I say, there may be certain things that either we continue doing or that you might want the executive member to do. And thank you.
Question about the learner voice, and how are you going to improve the recommendations on that?
If you've been on our website, which I'm sure you all have, you'll see there's a link to our learner survey as well already. That's been a bit of a challenge in itself, because each learner has an individual link sent to them, but that takes them to the front page. So anybody who clicks on our site can see the survey is there. Also, I have a weekly report so I have a weekly team meeting, and within the weekly team meeting, I get a performance update on the returns. We've got until the 5th of May to get our returns in. We've set targets against our subcontractors, our internal delivery, and obviously internally we've set it against individual caseloads as well. So we're looking for a 90% return, because I'm forever being optimistic, but I am a supporter of Welsh rugby, so here we are. We all are. For me, what I would deem as an improvement would be an 80+% return, even if that was to go back to the example of where we said 96% of our learners felt safe. If that turned to 90% of our learners felt safe in an environment, but it was an 80% return, it gives me much more data to sort of to work with it and look at the actions that we would take from it. So I think we're on track. I know currently there's 21% return so far. So that's within the first 2 weeks of the Learner Voice being opened. I know exactly where each of the training officers are with regards to their return as well. So that's something that we've never done. We've relied quite a lot in the past on the learner surveys going out, and they used to be paper and being returned. Obviously, we've got an online system. We've given our training officers some advice and guidance as well as to how they could potentially take their learner through the survey. They monthly review their learners and they visit their learners. There's an opportunity whilst paperwork's being completed for the learner to complete their survey online whilst you're with them. So we've had a discussion around good practice as well to ensure they're done.
Is there a clear sort of route then if a learner has a concern about something, whether it's in the workplace or whatever? Is there a clear route who they go to, when they go to, and that's all sort of mapped out for them?
If I could just start on that, absolutely. The purpose of the learner surveys is for the learner to have a voice to say how they feel about their learning, but we would never want a learner to wait until the survey came out if they had some concerns. So all learners are provided with information and the complaints procedure if they've got want to raise any concerns. So yes, they've got the information they've got their training officer who obviously they see directly, but then if for example, they may have an issue with their training officer, it may just be a clash of personality, they've got an escalation route, and as part of our pack, our information we give to learners, they will have that.
So through our OneFile system, we have an online induction, and each learner has to complete the online induction before they can move on to the next stage. Within that is the complaints procedure. Additionally, again, it will take a link to the website where there's a contact us, and there's a general inquiry line there, so any learner can go on and put their name and their contact number and their inquiry on there, and that would come through directly to me then. So
and there's a route in for if an employer was unhappy or concerned about any elements of the provision, there's a route in for them in the same way.
If they didn't feel confident about using that system, they could then come through personally to see somebody?
Absolutely, they could come through any of the systems with Torvine training, so the contact details they've got, and also as we are part of the council, they could come directly to the council website because we are governed by the council's processes. They could come to their elected member, their ward member, if they wanted to. I mean, absolutely, there are any routes in.
I've met with learners and parents and employers as part of my role, and I've done that sometimes when it's at the front end of a complaint, not at the back end of a complaint, which is quite nice in effect. And sometimes it only ends up at my desk if there's been a fault somewhere in the complaints procedure. But I'm quite happy if somebody's got an issue, they can pick up the phone, speak to me, and we can go from there.
I take it the PIAP is RAG rated, so it's looking very good at the moment. Lots of it green, there's just a couple of yellows there, so you've worked really hard to get to this stage, so well done. I think we are fully aware now of where you are with your PIAP and your improvement strategy for Torvine training, so thank you very much for the opportunity of going through it and actually visiting the site again. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Seaborn. Thank you.
So before we close the session, I'd just like to ask about have you had any problems with the Welsh language, any barriers there?
Yes, I think it's not so much problems. It's we can provide and we can offer everything that we need to provide contractually. We are Welsh Government are keen for learning through the medium of Welsh. Eston are keen through learning through the medium of Welsh. One of our sites is co-located on the site of Ysgol Gyfun Rhynllw, our Welsh medium secondary school. But there is an issue, and I think it's not just an issue with Torvine training or just locally, but there is an issue about the desire for take-up of work-based learning through the medium of Welsh, and also where people are working, whether they're within their workplace, the rest of the support is there available for them to undertake their work-based learning through the medium of Welsh. I'll leave Stuart to add a few of the details. But
I think my question was, have you sort of had any sort of problems recruiting staff in the Welsh language, because there is a general shortage, I think, isn't there, of teaching staff in the Welsh language. Just wondered how it's
all professionals.
Just wondered has it had an impact.
I think we haven't necessarily had the demand for the learning to mean that we would see a failure to recruit volumes, but Stuart may have some details.
I think with the recruitment of staff, obviously when our vacancy goes up, the Welsh speaking desirable is always marked up, and we don't get a great uptake. I think I did speak to people yesterday around the fact that we have an account manager who is a Welsh first, and she's a Welsh speaker, and she is our link then with Ysgol Gyfun Rhynllw as well. So we have the vehicle, we have the process in place around working with the school to develop those learners, but sometimes it's the want of the learners that's the problem. We don't get to see a great deal of applications that come through for jobs with us from Welsh speakers. So even though it's part of the application form and something we look at, we don't see a great deal of people even saying they speak Welsh. What we haven't done is advertise a solely sort of Welsh speaking post. Something we could look in the future.
Can I thank you very much for coming along this afternoon and for us to take part in the scrutiny, and also thank you really for the really warm welcome we had down at Springvale and also up at Trevethlin to the live station. We would be interested to keep an update on the progress, but thank you all very much for coming along.
Thank you very much, Missy, and thank you to our external panels
Yes,
for taking the
thank
time
you all
to
very
come.
much. Thank
you.
If we look at page 48 then, the scrutiny activity, 14.1, we need to address the progress made by Torvine Training, addressing the recommendations made by Estin, our feelings on that, and the support provided to Torvine Training to improve performance and witness the recommendations for improvement, whether Torvine Training has robust plans in place to continue to progress Estin's recommendation, and any other comments that you wish to make.
Sorry, can I just say, from looking at the recommendations and where they've come to, I think they've made great inroads into the improvement thing. I don't know whether or not they had the opportunity of asking where support might be. I know the chair asked, but whether or not there's any other opportunities that we can give them, I think mainly on the promotion of Torvine Training, because lots of people don't know about it.
Communications.
Yeah, and I think we need to actually link Torvine Training with any planned development and opportunities within the borough and the surrounding area.
Sorry.
I'm developing that. I'm wondering whether there was any opportunity for that organisation to look at widening its scope on the sort of learners that it can take in. It told us yesterday that they start at 16. There's an issue in secondary schools with a cohort of pupils who would certainly benefit from that sort of work-based training. There has been provision in the past for something like this. I'm not sure whether that's there or not at the moment, but it certainly would, in terms of widening the scope of their business, because they talk about being a business, didn't they? Quite a lot. But certainly in terms of developing those links with schools for looking at maybe whether they can access people at a younger age who would benefit from work-based learning. And we all know, it's certainly in secondary schools, those who are involved in secondary schools, there are a number of pupils who would certainly benefit from that, to their own benefit and to the benefit of the school as well, of course. Not wishing to just remove them. Yes, but they're only offering that at 16 plus, aren't they? I didn't ask it there, but I was quite interested why they only offer it at 16.
There are some schools where you work in College Gwent.
Yeah.
Especially those who are, shall we say, looking for more practical experiences rather than the academic.
Yeah.
i.e. instruction, going out a couple of days a week.
Certainly somewhere like Newport, there are schools who are sending pupils over to College Gwent, aren't there, in the Newport campus. I wasn't sure to ask. I wasn't sure what the level of support is in Torvine at the moment.
Sorry,
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say one of the things was to look at the Estin Advice 6 recommendations, and if you look at those and look at the figures and the information we've been provided with and the PAP and the progress, it does seem that they are making good progress on meeting those. One of the things I would ask is the progress made on the PAP is quite rapid, which is great. The pace of improvement is good. So that then leads me to ask, is it aspirational enough? So perhaps, do we need to be looking at more aspirational improvement, perhaps? I don't know if it's the right word, but...
I think there are two issues here really. And one is, I suspect Estin have had a difficulty understanding what Torvine training is, what it does, and how it fits into this common inspection framework that they've come up with. I mean, and we've noticed this with other areas that are not straight learning, not straight education, where Estin seem to struggle with it. And consequently, I think the converse is applied. I think Torvine training struggled with understanding what Estin wanted, particularly in terms of the new Estin framework, and particularly in terms of what they wrote as a SAR. However, if you look at the PAP, there seems to be huge improvements. If you look at the conclusions and summary, there has only been 2 actual improvements, and that is in care support and guidance, which have gone from unsatisfactory to adequate, and leadership and management, which has gone from unsatisfactory to adequate. So, if you look at it strictly, the improvements don't seem to be a lot. I mean, you can see what they're, you can see what they're going for, but I do wonder whether or not, listening to what's come back to me, I do wonder whether or not they've still not quite grasped what Estin are looking for. I've got a feeling that, much of what they were talking about was the teaching and learning experience, their changes around well-being and attitudes to learning and standards. However, a lot of what they spoke to us about didn't seem to cover those areas where they were unsatisfactory. So I do have a bit of worry about whether or not the next inspection will be as they expect. Hopefully it will be, because I read the risks and I know what the risks are. But I do have that concern that neither side still really understand each other and what the result of the next inspection will be.
Chair, I think part of that was she couldn't really answer the question on leadership. When asked, she just came up with some generic sort of management speak.
Yeah, they move people around.
About this and that. But there was no, I was looking for some sort of actual specific action that they've taken to improve leadership, when what I was getting was a lot on management, which are 2 different things really. So I wasn't convinced on that.
It's the one area where I think there is a weakness.
I mean, that's a specific weakness.
Yeah.
Because it's glaring in the
It
inspection.
does worry me that the only people that they report to is Rachel and the exec member. And the only people they report to is Rachel and the exec member. It strikes me that for something as important as Torvine training, in terms of what they do in the area, what they might be able to do under new Welsh Government contracts, I would have thought that there should be more oversight.
About the accountability and the management and the oversight of it all. If there's individuals looking at the thing, it can sometimes be missed when you've got a group of people, looking and scrutinising and actually following the PAP to make sure that the resource is actually.
Well, they've got that board now.
Yeah, I was just going to add, obviously they raised about the performance improvement support group which you're talking about, and obviously your concerns about the continual monitoring, and so I didn't know if you perhaps wanted to recommend something along the lines of, although they've made those judgments now to improve to adequate, whether you recommend that the continuation of that group until they hit their goods in those judgments, perhaps, yeah?
I'd also add to that as well, because obviously they have made great progress. You can see that on the PAP, or I feel that they've made great progress. That it might be worth coming back to scrutiny after the link visit or after the next set of results.
Yeah.
So.
Do you want then
I'm not sure about that visit, but I think
I was going to say, do you want to propose then that perhaps you put it in your basket when you do visioning next, and then after they'll have had the link visit and the Estin inspection then, and it could be that you review it going forward then.
Because the link visit. I think the next inspection will be very important. But I think one of the recommendations I'd like to make is that something is done about a little bit more oversight. Because it does strike me that they could do with, like a school has a governing body or a whatever, you know. But they don't seem to have that sort of slightly arm's length critical friend, if you like. And I think they could do with it.
That seems to be their mentality, isn't it? 'Cause they talk about the business all the time, don't they?
Mm.
You know, they don't talk about the organisation per se, do they? So maybe that needs some sort of...
Yeah, but it's got to make a profit, so it's you know, they are caught between a rock and a hard place.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
So perhaps looking at the potential for some sort of
board
management board to monitor.
Whether Torvine Training has robust plans in place to continue to progress Eston's recommendations. I think they probably have, to be fair.
I think that's down to leadership, isn't it? I think that's down to leadership, and I think if leadership could get above adequate, then that is an obvious thing that's going to move forward. I do. That's another issue that I worry about. This comes back to this original suggestion about a critical friend. I think if they'd had a board, I think perhaps they may have got a better. You know, they might have even been able to buy in a little bit of help from EAS to assist specifically with the inspection, to give them a better idea of what.
Down has a recommendation.
Well, certainly when schools are preparing for inspections, there's a significant focus on leadership, the quality of leadership, because that's, as you can see from the that's what Estin focusing on, zeroing on straight away. One of the two things mainly, the outcomes and leadership. So that obviously was patent, you know, it's a significant recommendation in the report of a shortcoming.
Well, skills is now the new buzzword, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do think they were at a disadvantage because it was a pilot project and it was the new Estin framework. So, you know, and it's like what was said yesterday, there were lots of different rules put into place after their training had actually started and things. So it was about playing catch up in lots of instances. So I think they've done quite a good job on what was a difficult situation. So.
Formulate those recommendations and send them round to make sure everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Okay. Move on then to agenda item 7, school standards monitoring subcommittee, and this is to update. And I'm just going to say, Councillor Rose now leave the meeting. Okay, you can see there, members, that we have a vacancy on the School Standards Monitoring Subcommittee, and in accordance with the relevant political balance, there is a vacancy, and we are suggesting Councillor Rose Seaborn. You are happy to accept a nomination? Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy.
Okay.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Is she going tomorrow?
Okay.
It's just I was speaking to her earlier, and she didn't even know it was taking.
Okay.
If we're expecting it.
The date of the next meeting will be the 9th of May.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Members, there are 3 items left in your basket. The May meeting is obviously the last meeting in this cycle for 17-18. The 3 items are post-16 education, 21st century schools and self-evaluation. At this point in time, I haven't got a specific recommendation as regards to which is the best timing. So if it's okay with members, myself and the chair will speak to the relevant officers and see which is most timely, unless you have any specific self-evaluation, so the new framework. Whether you have any particular views on which you would specifically like, that I can feedback.
It was 21st century schools, just an update on that, where we are with it.
Yeah.
And then the post-16 education, which would be quite a big piece of work, really. And we just need to make sure that we've got the timing and all the information on that. And I'm not sure that we would, but we certainly do need to be looking at it. Schools and post-16 to see which one would be the most appropriate to you.
Yeah. It's the new process, isn't it, of self-evaluation, so they want to make the committee aware of how
us as an authority?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Check out
those two.
the time scales and send those around for members if you agree. Okay, thanks very much.